On March 1st, 2007, in Clover, South Carolina, a utility worker was sent to 57-year-old Margaret Kennedy's house to shut off the gas due to non-payment. While he was turning it off, he could hear a dog inside barking hysterically. Feeling something wasn't right, he went and knocked on the door, but no one answered. Only the continuous barks of the dog. Still feeling something was wrong, he called the police, who came and performed a wellness check. Prior to the police visiting the house, they tried calling her, but her phone service had been disconnected 6 months before. She had no friends and kept mostly to herself. She was a widow, and her neighbors never recalled having ever spoken to her, even though she lived in the same house for more than 20 years. Upon entering the house, the police found only one of her two dogs, no Margaret or the other dog. Sitting on the kitchen table was one journal of many they found later on a bookshelf, as she kept meticulous journals of her life ever since she was 25. The journal was open, pen still sitting there, with the final entry. She detailed the disturbing events that had taken place to her over the past 2 months. These are some of the journal entries from the months prior to her vanishing. January 3rd, 2007. Tonight, as I was watching TV, my late son's favorite movie came on, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I never miss a chance to watch it, as it makes me emotional thinking of him and how often he'd watch it. It was only fitting I named my two Yorkies Bill and Ted. They have no idea how much they've helped me get through the grief of losing my only son. I'm getting too emotional, so that's all for today. January 5th, 2007. After work today, I was making dinner when suddenly Ted stood up and jumped from the couch. He ran to the entrance of the hallway, standing there intently staring into the darkness. I was about to ask him what's going on when he started whimpering, then turned and ran behind the couch. Bill had been asleep but quickly jumped up and started barking like a madman as he ran down the hallway. I dropped the knife I was cutting potatoes with, as I'd never seen them do this before. My first thought was someone was in my house, but keeping my doors and windows locked all the time was a borderline obsession for me. Without warning, Bill stopped barking, like someone put a muzzle on him, and he ran to the same spot as Ted. I called out, "Who's there?" even though I was scared out of my mind. The house was completely silent. Not even the boys were making a peep. A few minutes went by before I got brave enough to go turn on the hallway lights and walk down to check the rooms, which turned out to be nothing. All the windows and front door were locked, as I suspected. I chalked it up to them just being scaredy cats of nothing, laughing as I teased them. January 10th, 2007. I fell asleep on the couch but was suddenly awakened to Bill and Ted running down the hallway, straight into my son's room. For the longest time, they were quiet. So quiet, in fact, I thought something happened to them. Thoughts of the other night came flooding back into my mind. It took me quite some time to get up from the couch, and even longer to walk down to his room. I rarely go in there, as it's painful to see his things from when he was my little boy. As I entered the room, they were standing there with their eyes glued to the closet door. I asked them what's going on, but they wouldn't move. Part of me was saying leave the house and get help, but I've always tried controlling my emotions and think there's always a logical explanation for everything. I knew I couldn't go to bed, though, unless I checked the closet, so I reached out and grabbed the handle. As I turned the knob, the boys looked up at me and started quietly backing up. I hesitated, debating whether or not just to swing it open or do it slowly. I decided to just get it over with and quickly swung it open. A sigh of relief overcame me as there was no one in there. It was almost exactly the same I'd left it years ago, except for one thing. Sitting on the floor was an old, rusting, mechanical wind-up, crawling baby doll. I racked my brain trying to remember if he'd even had such a toy, but as far as I remember, he didn't. It looked really old also, over 100 years I'd say. It's creepy, and I'm not sure what to do with it. If it was his, I don't want to throw it away, so I picked it up and put it on his dresser. January 15th, 2007. I'm not sure if it's just paranoia, but I was having the most god-awful dream last night when one of the boys stood up on the bed and started whimpering loudly, which woke me up. I swear, I then heard something scurrying across the floor and down the hallway. I flipped on the lamp as I watched Bill leap off the bed, running out of the room barking. I was about to shout out to him, but fear paralyzed me. Ted immediately crawled under the blanket and onto my lap. He was silent and shaking uncontrollably. "What's going on, Ted? Am I losing my mind?" I asked him aloud. Bill continued barking for quite some time as I sat on the bed, too afraid to move or even call out to him. All of a sudden, he came running back into the room, climbed on the bed, and laid down like nothing happened. When I came home from work today, I had a feeling I should check my son's closet again. I noticed something odd, though, when I walked into his room. Usually both boys follow me everywhere I go, but only Bill followed me, while Ted refused to go inside my son's room. Like before, I hesitated before grabbing the doorknob, afraid of what I might find, when Bill went up and scratched the door. My curiosity wouldn't let me leave without checking, so I took a deep breath and opened the door. I now knew something was definitely going on, because sitting there was one of those really old roly-poly clown toys. It even smelled old, and is just as creepy looking as the mechanical doll. The thought crossed my mind to throw it in the trash, but instead I put it next to the other toy I'd found. I also thought about telling someone, but knew I'd sound crazy, so decided against it. January 20th, 2007. Something really worrisome happened today when I got home. Usually the boys come running to greet me, but when I opened the door, the house was completely silent, and they were nowhere in sight. My first thought was they somehow got out of the backyard fence. I frantically ran to the back door, opening to see if that was the case. After looking around and not seeing how they could have gotten out, I thought maybe they were still in the house. I checked several rooms and finally found them huddled together under my bed. They were shaking like Ted was the other night. They wouldn't even come out on their own. I had to literally pull them out, and when I did, they quickly ran back under the bed and stayed there the rest of the evening, only coming out when I retired to bed, at which point they joined me. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm worried I'm either losing my mind or something darker is at play here. January 25th, 2007. I'm not sure what to do. I'm getting so scared. I thought I was dreaming last night when I was awakened to the boys whimpering. I heard them just outside my bedroom, then the sound moved down through the hallway. I immediately jumped out of bed and ran towards them. I flipped on the hallway light before going further, expecting to see them or at least them running towards me, but they didn't. I stood there listening as I called out to them. Several minutes later, I could hear one of them scratching on a door. I slowly moved down the hallway, unsure of what was going on. As I got closer to my son's room, I could tell the scratching was coming from inside the closet. I ran inside and quickly flung the door open. They bolted out, going straight for my room. I was fully expecting to see another toy sitting there, but instead, there's now a disturbing marking that seems to be burned into the wall of the closet. I can't even put into words what it looks like, as I've never seen anything like it before. For the first time in many years, I closed the door to my son's room. I can't explain what's happening, but whatever it is, I just wish it would stop. January 30th, 2007. I think I'm losing my mind. I'm at my end's rope. I just don't know what to do. I have no one to turn to, and if I tell anyone, they'll think I'm just a crazy person and may possibly be committed. Last night I was reading a book in bed and must have fallen asleep. The next thing I knew, my blanket was wrapped around me so tightly I couldn't move at all, and thought I was going to suffocate. Something then dragged me out of my room and down the hallway. I was thrown against a wall in an awkward position with my legs in the air. I laid there for several hours as I dared not move until I could no longer feel my legs and was in a great deal of pain. I finally had the courage to roll out of the blanket to see I was in my son's closet. I later found the boys in my closet huddled in the corner. Neither of them would leave until morning. Why won't this stop? Whatever it is, please just leave me alone. February 4th, 2007. Oh my God. I'm not even sure I can write this down, but I have to. The unthinkable has happened. I woke up to Bill whimpering and licking my face. I thought everything was fine until I noticed Ted was not there, which he always is. I called out to him, but to no avail, so I began frantically scouring the house, but he was nowhere to be found. The last place to check was what I'd been dreading, my son's room. As I walked up to the door, a dark feeling overcame me. Deep down, I somehow knew it wasn't going to end well. Right as I was about to open the door, I heard something in his room running across the hardwood floor. My first thought it was Ted, but it didn't sound at all like him, or even a dog for that matter. At first I backed away frightened of what it could be. The thought of my little Ted in there all by himself, or worse, overtook me, so I opened the door. I was a little surprised, as I hoped he'd be standing right there with his tail wagging, but he was not. It was then I noticed something sticking out from under the closet door. It looked like hair, but was slightly reddish in color. My heart sank as I ran over and flung the door open. I fell to my knees in dismay, as there before me was the mutilated body of my sweet little Ted. Something had literally ripped him apart. I slowly closed the door and left the room, as I couldn't bear to see it. I'm at a total loss. I can't believe he's no longer here. Where do I go from here? I cried all night and called in sick to work this morning, knowing I was going to have to bury Ted in the backyard. It took me hours before I was able to bring myself to even walk into my son's room. When I opened the closet door, though, I was aghast. His body was gone. The only thing remaining was a very small heart, which I'm sure is his. All the blood was gone also, not even a remnant left. I picked up his little heart and buried it in a small hole in the back, along with his favorite toy. Bill now won't leave my room and refuses to eat or drink. I laid in bed the rest of the day, too depressed to move. February 9th, 2007. I haven't left the house or been back to work since Ted died. Bill still won't leave my room and stays under the bed most of the time, but at least he's drinking again and eating a little. I'm running out of food, but don't even feel like eating. I admit I've longed for death ever since losing the two people in my life that mattered most, my husband and son, but now Ted is gone and Bill is all I have. February 14th, 2007. Last night, I woke up in the middle of the night, already sitting upright, my body covered in sweat. Something was in my bedroom. I caught a glimpse of it as it ran out of my room. Whatever this thing is it real, or am I truly losing my mind? February 19th, 2007. I'm sitting at the dinner table, just ate a delicious steak and baked potato, realizing things seem to be going back to normal, and Bill is slowly becoming himself again. The only thing missing is Ted. Wait! What is that? I just heard something. It's coming down the hallway. That was the last sentence in Margaret's journal. When the police entered the house, they found Bill still alive. Her dirty plate from her last dinner was still sitting on the table, with a glass next to it that was tipped over that most likely contained water. After reading her journal, they checked for Ted's grave out back and found it only containing his heart and toy. They also found the old toy sitting on the dresser just like she'd written. When they checked her son's room, not only did they find the strange, burned marking on the wall of the closet, but they did find something else that was extremely disturbing. There, on the floor of the closet, was Margaret's heart. It was determined to be hers after a DNA test was performed. The rest of her body was never found. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe.